How's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
Fantastic. It's great to see you.
It's great to see you as well.
I was just thinking it's been almost like 7 or 8 months since we had our last conversation. I cannot believe it's been that long.
That's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, it feels like yesterday and it also feels like another lifetime ago. I was thinking about that earlier. I was like, when did we do our last one? Was that like May or
Like June.
June?
Yeah, June.
June?
Yeah.
Cool, dude. Yeah, man, I'm stoked. I'm really I love what you're doing and I think you're kicking ass and I'm always happy to come on.
Well, I appreciate it. And I've been following along your journey as well, listening to the Eben Flow more and more. I just listened to a big portion of your episode you just did with your brother. It
Uh-huh.
was
Yeah.
really hit me. So,
Cool, man. I'm glad.
yeah. So I just saw you got back from Montana. That
Yeah.
was looked like a very interesting trip. I had no idea that you were like as outdoorsy as you are. No offense. I mean, I
Yeah.
I thought you grew up in the city. You fucking picked that shotgun up and were shooting like a pro.
I know, dude. It was pretty funny. Yeah, it was interesting because I went with my dude Alon. Alon was actually one of the co-creators of Hotboxin. He was the director and the editor of it before it all fell apart and now it is whatever it is. But and we're doing a whole podcast, really a media production company now. And we went on this trip and he had no idea about that side of me either. And even it was interesting doing it because I was reminded of this whole other side of myself that I even forget about sometimes. I
Mhm.
mean, I love nature, I love being outdoors, obviously. That's been a big part of my healing process and life after football. And I always feel so rejuvenated going back to nature. But I mean, I started shooting shotguns when I was probably 12 years old, and I would compete in these sporting clays tournaments. And I think I was like 13 or something. I was a junior state champion of California doing that. And I've gone a couple times since coming back to California. But that was honestly in the video. In the moment, I said I hadn't shot in about a year, but it was probably more like I haven't shot in like 3 years. And I just picked that thing up and just started having a ball. I was totally loose. I mean, it's like riding a bike, man.
Yeah.
But, hey, dude, I mean, it goes with everything. It's part of this whole thing, isn't it? Um, like, yeah, I'm a yogi and I'm fucking a meditator and I'm super zen, but that, at the end of the day, I'm still a savage, you know?
Well, that's why I relate to you. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I think deep down inside of us, we're all both.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're everything. You know what I mean? And it's just a matter of
Totally.
what's influenced us along our way in our journey that maybe pushes us more into one of those than the other. But underneath it all, I think it's probably why going back into nature and even people who've never spent time in nature, when they go out into nature, they get energized, they get
Yeah.
connected. And it's
Yeah.
because of, from my opinion, it's the deep roots of our ancestors, and that's how we've evolved. That
Totally.
you can't get away from that in just a couple of 100 or 1,000 years. I mean, it's stupid to think that. It's silly, right?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's so multidimensional because our connection with nature. And we have this weird thing. We're already rolling in the pod, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. I see you got the recording going, so that's good. We have this weird thing, and Alan Watts is one of my big spiritual teachers who I listen to pretty frequently. And, one of his main things that he's always coming back to is how humans, man, we're trying to extricate ourselves from nature, uh, meanwhile totally neglecting the fact, the scientific universal reality that we are nature. And that's been my whole thing with technology. It's like, yeah, it's a great tool, but at the end of the day, we are nature and we need nature. We need to be in nature and within it. And, like you said, this is so genetic. This is encoded in our DNA to be out in nature, out in some form of natural environment, whether that's the beach and the ocean or the mountains or the desert or wherever it is. And even beyond that, if you're someone who doesn't believe in that, there's a whole scientific thing that happens too. Grounding, the relationship or the synergistic experience of what happens when your skin comes into contact with sunlight, the exposure to terpenes and these natural essences, I mean, coming from cannabis, that's how I learned about terpenes.
Yep.
And then you start to figure out, oh fuck, the reason you feel so meditative and serene and at peace when you're in a forest is because those trees are just dumping pinene on you. And pinene is one of the terpenes you find in cannabis, of course, that makes you feel super relaxed, super at peace. Um, so there's actual scientific data. The Japanese have done tons of studies on this. Um, there's a great podcast I listen to a lot, Mysterious Universe. Do you know these guys?
I don't. I
They're
will
two
now.
yeah, they're two Australian dudes, and every episode is one of the guys has just read a book, and they've literally been doing it for like 20 seasons. I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing. It's like, who even knew podcasts were going back that far? I think Joe Rogan even was like, his first podcast was maybe like 2009.
Yeah.
Um, and these guys literally do at least a season a year, and the seasons are they put out one episode a week for the general public. Anyway, they do everything from aliens to interdimensional beings to nutrition science. And one of their episodes was on all of these really fascinating Japanese studies that were done on the experience of people going into nature and what that did physiologically to your whole system, de-stressing you, like anti-aging effects, like all kinds of shit goes on when you go out into nature. And of course, here in America, we'd much rather, let the CDC and Dr. Fauci tell us what science is.
Could you imagine if those were the stories that were abundant on our news? If you turned on CNN or you turned on ABC News at 5 o'clock, it was 5 or 6 stories about things like that. As opposed to just like dumping shit on people constantly nonstop. What doesn't it make sense though? I mean, ultimately, for the greater
Totally,
good of
dude.
everybody, that we would want to promote things like that to make people reflect and really think and then want to actually go and do those things to make themselves better.
Absolutely, man. So when it's not that, it really just makes you wonder, like, what's the purpose of it? Because it just doesn't serve their purpose to have people, you know, saying, "Hey, fuck it, man. Let's go to the beach today. Let's go out into the woods today and just take a hike.
Yeah, you wouldn't
Let's
be
get
tuning
ourselves
in.
healthy."
Yeah, but you know what? Yeah, no, you're right. It's all comes down to money.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And to me, it doesn't, it helps them much. It serves their purposes to have people in a state of fear, because when you're in fear, you need all of these things. You need these institutions to tell you what to do next. I had an insanely awesome conversation with this guy, Joe DiStefano. Coach Joe.
Yeah.
He's a kettlebell wizard. He's a breath work master. I mean, this guy's awesome. I highly recommend following him on Instagram. And we talked about nasal breathing, and I'm a big breath work guy. I love breath work. But nasal breathing is so vitally important, especially in this day and age. When you become, most of us become a mouth breather, and it's almost not to any fault of our own. And how he broke down nasal breathing equates to an activated parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest. Also, that's when your prefrontal cortex is functioning optimally, is when you're in the parasympathetic nervous state. And your nervous system functions in two states, parasympathetic and sympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight. That's, you're in your reptilian brain. You're functioning from the emotional mechanisms. You're scanning, you're trying not to die.
Just reacting.
Yeah, and so when you're constantly mouth breathing, and you almost naturally, inherently, you become a mouth breather after experiencing any sort of trauma, emotional, physical, and we all have experienced some degree of trauma in our life, which has sent us into this low hum fight or flight state. Most Americans are walking out of their house every day and they've got a very low hum fight or flight going on, which means they're not using their executive functioning. They're really caught in their reptilian brain, in their more primal brain. So it's more difficult to think for yourself. It's more difficult to engage your, prime decision making faculties, your executive functioning, etc. So nasal breathing in itself is so key right now. And because that just gets us out of that fight or flight state that we're all in all the time. Like coming out of football, I've been in I'm still, like, my whole life is kind of about redirecting my nervous system. Everything I do, meditation, breath work, exercise, how I eat, how I, make sure I prioritize sleep, etc. It's all about shifting my nervous system back into this parasympathetic state. Now we need our fight or flight. We need that to survive. It's really important. If you go out into the world, you see the mountain lion cross the path, or you step out into the street and a fucking car is coming, being able to snap into that sympathetic state and get that burst of adrenaline to save your life, to get out of danger. Super important, right? But it's not serving us to be walking around in this low level fight or flight at all times. It's just not. It's killing us. It's
Is
literally killing us.
is there I would imagine there's hormones and all kinds of other things that are being affected when your body's in those states.
Absolutely, man. Your sex hormones are all fucked up. It makes it really difficult. Like when you get into fight or flight, it restricts blood flow. It shuts off your sex organs. It gets you out of the prefrontal cortex, like I said. There's a whole cascade of hormonal responses happening
Mhm.
that are literally, it's suppressing your immune system. Because when you're in it, think about it. 1,000 years ago, however long ago, we're living in tribal communities, and you go out into the world and you got to be sharp as a tack, ready for whatever it is. The tiger in the bush, whatever. You have to be ready to kill something, kill or be killed. I mean, that's kind of, we're animals at the end of the day. So everything else has to be shut off for you to have that type of focus and clarity of survival, pure survival mechanism. So that's absolutely, which makes it even more important. The other thing about nasal breathing, which he said, which was, I thought was so fascinating, which a lot of people may or may not already know. when you breathe in and out through your nose, and why it's, another good reason during the time of COVID and everything that's happening, breathing in and out through your nose, there's literally this labyrinth in your nasal cavity where the air has to go travel through all of this whole maze of circuitry, and there's all these little hairs, and the whole time you're nasal breathing, those hairs are collecting all the bacteria and all the shit that it doesn't want to go into your body.
Mhm.
And meanwhile, you're absorbing more oxygen, you're getting more of the nutrients that you need into your bloodstream. And then anything that gets collected, you end up swallowing it. So it goes into your stomach to be broken down and destroyed by your digestive system, by your stomach acid. And you don't get the thing that was in the air that you breathed in through your nose. Not only that, nasal breathing activates your nitric oxide production. And nitric oxide is super important for blood flow, your immune system, your brain function. It's a vital molecule for literally every organ in your body. And we only activate that when we do nasal breathing. I don't know how we got on that. I think it was
No,
through
it's
the
so good
nature.
though.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's, and then I think about as you're sitting there, and I guess it's probably been better recently, but people driving in cars, right? It's like you get you get on the highway and you're driving to the office, you're instantly in that mode. You're instantly on edge.
Yeah.
You're at a 7 right out of the gate.
Totally.
And then you're going to a job with people who you can't stand to spend the majority of your life with, to then go home and start it all over again. I mean, I don't know how people aren't, like, how they've survived and how we've gotten. I mean, it's a miracle. I think it's the miracle of what a human is, right? And
Absolutely, dude. I mean, I totally agree. I'm always brought to that place of being in awe of the resiliency and durability of the human animal, you know? Like, we're built to last, and we're just here fucking doing all kinds of shit unknowingly, many times, sometimes knowingly, to try to just destroy ourselves. The flip side of that, though, Justin, I mean, we're in a complete mental and spiritual crisis right now.
Mhm.
Humanity. I mean, that's why, like, the universe is bringing all of this shit to the forefront. That's why cannabis emerged the way it did. That's why psychedelics are starting to emerge the way they are. There's an intelligence, the unseen intelligence of this whole thing that moves everything, us included,
Yep.
is going, you guys are in a you guys, we need help. Like, the system needs to be stabilized because everything that we've been doing, it ain't working. It's not working, you know?
Do you think we come to a realization of that as a whole? Because there's days where I feel very optimistic, and then there's other days where I couldn't be more like, I'm so glad I've got my little chunk of land here in Pennsylvania, man, because fuck if I know ever going to be normal again.
Dude, I mean, I feel that totally resonates with me. I have those days where I feel really optimistic, where I'm looking around and I'm going, yeah, I think we're going to be okay. Like, people are tuning in, people are, waking up. I kind of hate to use that term now, but
Mhm.
that's sort of the only way to say it, really. I don't know. That's kind of the only metaphor to give to it. Because a lot of people are living life asleep, you know, and it's just, and what does that mean? That means you're just unconscious. You have unconscious relationships. Your whole life is an unconscious relationship with the external world. How you eat, how you carry yourself, how you sleep, what you're doing for your job, and how you're going about your life.
Mhm.
You're going about it unconsciously. In other words, you're going about it as you might as well be asleep. And slowly but surely, you know, we all, I mean, I'm still like, I've woken up to certain aspects of things, but I'm waking up to more and more things all the time,
Yeah. It's
you
an
know?
evolving process.
And absolutely. And that's sort of the unfolding of the human experience. Um, the beauty is we have access to all of it already. It's in us. You know, you hear of these, you hear there's all the time. I mean, the spiritual gurus talk about it, you know, spontaneous enlightenment and just like coming fully into yourself and all in one moment. It's a process that takes a long time, and it depends kind of where you're at in the grand scheme of it all, if that makes sense. But you know, I think, dude, I think talking about this with Joe yesterday as well. There's this incredible book, maybe you've read it, by Dr. David Hawkins called Power versus Force.
I've heard of it, but I haven't read it.
I mean, this book, I read this probably after our last podcast, and it literally saved, maybe saved my life. I mean, because I was really, throughout COVID, man, I've been brought to the depths of my darkness. It's been like an 8 month or what, however fucking long this thing has been. It's been that long of an ayahuasca trip, you know? And it's like, I've been shown my deepest, darkest shit. I've been shown sort of the seeds of my functioning mechanism, my deep, 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 deep repulsion of authority, my deep-seated need to save everyone in the world. Um, you know, and with that in the state and the environment of the world, that's come with a lot of frustration, a lot of anger, you know, and my deepest, darkest self is born out of the intersection of anger and fear in me. And that's when I snap into my ancient warrior self, where I'm ready to fucking pick up the battle axe and the sword and just go to war. And that's just not who I realized really quickly getting into a handful of like social media debates, because there's no debates happening in social media, you know, unfortunately. It could be a great platform for that, and especially now, because you know, if you don't have the perspective of the big tech oligarchs, then you might as well go fuck yourself. But you know, I would come out of these like, I was trying to have these arguments or these debates with people on social media, and I'd come out just totally wrecked. And I'd be like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. If I have to do this every day, I'm fucked. Like I might not make it. So I read this book, Power versus Force. And this guy, David Hawkins, he's profound. He's a profound spiritual leader. I mean, he's done so much incredible work with mapping out the levels of consciousness and taking these kinesiological tests um, and applied them to spiritual concepts, psychological concepts. And basically, what he says in there, and the idea of power versus force, anytime something is let's call it a movement, anytime a movement is created out of force, meaning there's an attempt to force people into a certain way of being or force people into a specific ideology, the mere fact that it's being created to change, to make a change in people that's outside of their organic inherent understanding of life and things, it inherently creates a resistance to it. And anything that's coming out of force, which is not based in truth. So let's say, and I don't know what your audience is like, but because I've used this word and I've gotten like the super deep intellectuals tell me that there's no such thing, but I use the word gravity. And I get it. They go, Ed, there's no such thing as gravity. It's all magnetism, bro. And I'm like, all right, I vibe with that. But just take gravity as a concept. Gravity is a power. Everything functions within gravity just as a concept. There's no, and it's eternal, it's infinite. It is the thing that kind of holds everything together.
I've never floated off the fucking earth, man. All the years that I've
Exactly.
been here, something's doing it.
Exactly. Call it gravity, call it magnetism, whatever you want to call it. There's a power that all of this, all of us functions within. And that will never, there's no, it's an eternal power. It's a sustained energy. But a force, something that's created, let's call it the Holocaust or Nazi Germany, the Nazi movement. That was a force. It was putting people into a thing, literally putting people into gas chambers, putting Jews into gas chambers, and creating this thing and saying, this is the way the world is going to be created. And what did it do? They inherently created a massive resistance against that because it goes against all laws of nature, truth, love, compassion. Love and compassion are really powers in their own right as well. So what's happening here, there's a lot of force being created, a lot of force in all different directions, whatever you want to call it. There's fucking philosophical force being, created. There's you know what it is. And it's not sustainable. It's just inherently not sustainable because, and you can already see it, the resistance that's been created through all of these things, whether it's our government, whether it's big pharma, whether it's big tech, whoever it is, they have created literal movements that are inherently creating resistance to them. And anything that creates a resistance is a totally unsustainable source of energy, and it'll fizzle out. I don't know what that looks like. Maybe that just looks like more and more people, guys like you and me, continuing to talk. I mean, dude, I'm sort of mind blown. I'm really stoked up right now because I was just going through some messages and I've just started a Patreon account, and so these people who are reaching out to me who are saying just like, I really want to do good. I really want to do good in this world. I feel like I have a lot of work to do. I felt like that since I was a little kid. And like every time I get on a podcast, there's a little voice in my head that's like, Eb, you better be special this time, dude. You better be special. You better be smart. You better say the thing that's going to change the world. And the beauty of that is, in my spiritual practice, it's like, fuck you. Letting all of that go and just being here present with whatever it is that I've got to offer in this moment. And that's the dance I'm always doing. And these people are sending me messages saying, Eb, what you said, that, in your last podcast changed my life. Eb, what you said in this thing, it totally changed how I think about the world. And I'm like, fuck, man. I just have to keep putting it out there and just being myself. And that's it. Like, that's all there is. It's
I get
like,
I get more messages on my account about the episode I did with you, which is why I was so like, I want to get you back on, because I mean, just regardless if anybody hears it, I get benefits. So I'm selfish in that. Like, dude, connecting with you and vibing, you're
yeah,
talking about things that I feel like is such a reflection of the way I feel about things. So that's beneficial, but people vibe with it, and it's the honesty, you're just
yeah,
very real.
that's it.
Let
That's
me
it.
give me 1 second. I've got a buzzer that keeps going off here for a second. I don't know if you can
Oh,
hear it. I
I
feel like
can't hear it, but go for it, dude.
you hear.
Oh, there it is. It's the razor or something.
No, you know what it is? So it's the dryer.
Oh my God. Yeah,
I'm
of
like, what is
course.
that noise? And usually it goes off at the end of it, but No,
Of
but
course, dude.
right at the best part. No, but so it's funny you say all this because when I feel that way, I've there's been moments where I've felt very insignificant and
Yeah,
like is it worth like am I able to affect change? Am I able to do anything? Am I selfish for wanting to try to do that? You know, is
right.
it kind of egotistical of me to even think that my opinion matters enough to be out there that much, or should I just, you know, kind of do my thing and affect who I do in my path? But you know, then I have those moments where I feel empowered and I feel the value. And then it's those special notes. Somebody will reach out and say something like, "Hey, dude, really appreciated you sharing that. I didn't realize other people thought the same thing." And
Yeah,
giving someone an opportunity to feel like they've connected.
yeah.
That's the beauty of all of this, you know. And I don't know, it's
Totally, man.
it's beautiful in a lot of ways.
It is, dude. It's fucking beautiful. I mean, it's the Bhagavad Gita. Are you familiar?
I am.
It's Arjuna on the battlefield putting his sword down, going, I can't do this. I don't want to fight this fight, man. Like, these are my cousins over here across the battle lines. Like, there's going to be so much death and bloodshed. Like, I can't, I'm done with the suffering. And then his fucking chariot uh, driver emerges as Krishna, the Hindu god of all gods. And he's like, no, bro, you got to pick up the sword. This is your dharma. This is what the fuck we're doing here. And that's like what all of this is about. This isn't about me being looked at as some fucking smart guy or the wise one or the Zen master Ebb or whatever it is. All I'm ever doing is literally sharing with you what the universe tells me to. Because beyond that, like, I don't have any ideas. Anytime I try to do my thing, shit gets fucking weird and fucked up and
Yeah.
goes sideways and comes off inauthentic. Like what you said, the honesty is what, and I did this podcast earlier with this woman, Dana Levinson, who has a great podcast called On the DL. And she was like in tears talking about what one of my podcasts did for her. And I was like in tears because I don't even, I have that all the time. I'm like, yeah, what are you doing? Who cares? Who gives a shit? I'm an ex-football player. Like, just fucking stay at home, be a dad, do the dishes, take the dog for a walk. Why are we doing this? And then
Deep
all of
in
a
here though.
sudden it's just like yeah, the universe just keeps like bringing it in. It's like, yeah, no, here, got to do this. Go sit down here. Go do this thing. Go over here. Write this book. And it's what we're doing here, man. It's our dharma. There's karma and there's dharma. Our dharma is our life purpose. It's our life work. Like, we all have it. Like you, dude. I mean, your platform is so fucking important right now. Like, your interview with Tim Kennedy fucking blew my mind and really opened me up to, it's like this little, it's such a slow integration process, but the only thing that matters is that we're all here standing in our fucking truth. And right now, whatever you want to call it, whoever is behind it, and I think a lot of it, I had this thought the other day because my brother and I just did a deep dive. This is going to be kind of a recurring thing with, I had this idea of like, there's this thing of cultural lunacy and pseudo intellectualism that's going really too far. And it needs to be addressed in some way. And, and my brother and I had this talk, and throughout the podcast, I'm like, do I really want to go here? Do I want to do this? But whatever you think, but it brought me back to this Bhagavad Gita. This is my dharma. The universe is calling me into this role to speak my truth on this thing that I feel compelled about. And hey, trust me, man, I've gone so far the other way. I'm constantly checking myself, constantly going, Eb, are we sure? Are we sure about this? Because there's a lot of people who are on this side who believe in this thing as strongly as you feel about this thing. Are we sure? And then I go back and I check and I go, yeah, this is it. This is it. And there's a thing happening right now. I don't know what it is. Oh, this is what I wanted to say. Jesus, forgive them for they know not what they do. Going back to everyone being unconscious. Maybe it's all happening unconsciously. And that's an issue because we are no longer in a state where we can speak from an unconscious point of view. We can't afford it. We can't afford it anymore. We've got too much access. Technology has taken us so fast. We're evolving so quickly. Our consciousness is evolving so quickly. We can't afford unconscious information anymore. Boom. And it's like, so there's a real thing happening, man. Ideologies are being put forth. Philosophies about human nature. People are really divided. People have really strong ideas that are maybe not grounded in a conscious state. They're coming from something else, and I think about it, and a lot of the topics we discuss are like, one thing that really triggered this was I saw this story, and this goes back all the way to 2016, but it's sort of like the ripples of it have come out this far is um there's all of these fucking academic papers coming out about how breastfeeding leads to gender inequality. And it just sent me into this. I was like, I don't even know where to begin with this, but it's just kind of a microcosm of the bigger issue, which is, why are we planting these seeds in people? There's so much important shit for us to be working through, so much pain and trauma to be rectified, and suffering to be ameliorated. Why are we stoking this fire? Like, why are we creating another thing to divide people on?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why, and like going back to my previous point, seeing your interview with Tim Kennedy and my integration process of standing firmer in my truth, like even from our last interview, dude, like now I've kind of gone, I'm like, here I am. It's just time to fucking rock and roll, dude. There's no more, because for a while I was like, Eb, I don't think we can put this podcast out. It's too controversial. It's too heavy. It's too this or that.
Did any of that tie back to hotboxing? I mean, do you feel like that having that off of your back gives you the freedom to be more who you really are?
That's interesting. I mean, I never consciously thought I always felt safe to be myself with hotboxing, but the whole journey through hotboxing, leaving there, moving into this new space of really solidifying who I am and what the fuck I'm doing here. The trip to Montana, even that trip to Montana was really like, Eb, this is what you're doing now. This is who you are. This is what it's all about. And it was like shooting the shotguns. Like even that, like it seems kind of insignificant and like just kind of a cool photo op in a way. But it was really important for me completing the circle of myself, of who I am and what I'm doing here, and standing like rooted in my truth, because it's like I talked about in that podcast with my brother, where I'm talking about the tragic death of my beloved French bulldog Sonny. it's really easy to be spiritual when shit's going good, man. It's really easy, you know. You can talk about, God and the way the universe moves and all that shit, but when shit really goes down and you're struck with tragedy and adversity and all of that, you really find out what the fuck is going on. What is life really about?
It's funny you
You
say
know?
that. My wife and I just went through some shit, and really tough time for a few weeks. And, we had kind of gotten away from the spirituality as a family that we, practiced. And she's like, I really want to kind of get back to that place again. But I could tell that she felt a lot of guilt. And we talked about the guilt that she felt,
Mm,
like, hey, when things are good, I kind of fall away from it, almost kind of the opposite.
right,
She
right.
felt guilty that in a time of, where she needed that security and that additional support, that reaching out and, whether it be God or whatever it is that
Yeah,
reach out towards,
yeah,
that she felt guilty, that it was like, okay, now I'm calling when I need help. And I kind of spun it to her like, well, isn't that the most honest time though? Like when you really feel like you need something, that's where you turn. To me, that's something to be proud of. Not, maybe, yeah, you can try to change and adjust, and we can try to be better in times when times are better. But I mean, to me, it says a lot that when shit gets tough, that's when you go to where that you actually can get what you need.
definitely, man. I would definitely say that is the flip side of that relationship. Um, the other thing I'll say about that, and I use these terms, these metaphors sort of interchangeably: God, the universe, higher power, the higher intelligence, whatever it is, that however you want to identify it. I'm not, I don't, I am not one to advocate for any specific religion or whatever. I'm not really, that's not my experience. I just have a deep relationship with God, my God, higher power, the universe. Um, and my brother said this really beautiful thing because, Sonny's death really kind of brought out all of this. Like he was such a powerful little dude. And, the lessons kind of keep coming. But my brother said this really amazing thing. He's like, I detest the idea of God as the buffet line. And it's like, I'll take this, but not that. It's all God. All of this shit, everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, it's all fucking God. It's all the universe. It's all this one thing that we're all a part of. And once you surrender to that, life becomes a whole lot more enjoyable, because I can go, you know what? Wow, I'm so grateful for my time with Sonny. I'm so great. I feel so blessed that I had those 2 years with him and I learned so much from him. And I've learned even more now through his death and the experience of that. And I know that his essence, his spirit is so powerful. Like he's on to the next thing. He's probably fucking just been born as a fucking eagle somewhere, you know, or the next fucking world leader, even. I don't know. I mean, I had this friend who's he's kind of a family friend who's also like a pretty well, highly regarded meditation teacher. And he was like, maybe Sonny this was his last incarnation as a dog and he was ready to move on to the next thing. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me, you know, because he was just such the embodiment. He was a sunbeam, we called him Sunny, Sunny, because he was just sunlight embodied, And yeah, man, it's a big time, and this sticking on this God train, it seems like the thing that we're talking about, this cultural sort of manipulation, if you will, this conversation I had yesterday with Joe, he brought up this other book written by David Hawkins, where he talks about this whole thing and this infiltration in the American public school system in the 90s of this idea of moral relativism, which is basically an attack. It's basically war on God. It's war on spirituality. And it's to deconstruct, for lack of a better term, the principles that we all really inherently live by of the Ten Commandments. And I don't prescribe to Christianity. I don't really, and so using that term, I know that's supercharged, and some people will go, well, fuck that, why is that a big whatever? But inherently, like, we all live by this code of conduct, which you could boil it down to the Ten Commandments. Treat others as you wish to be treated. Don't steal from other people. And we all kind of have that.
Yep.
We all really have that built in. I mean, through conditioning, through our circumstances, through the environment we're brought into this world in. We break those codes all the time, and that's part of our learning process. But this was a really interesting idea, I thought, because I was like, there's an ineffable truth to the human experience that is being subjugated in a way by the culture. And it's strange, and it's subtle, and it's very much, you might not even notice
Well, it's really
if you're
scary
not paying
now.
attention.
It's
Yeah.
really, with how people cancel people now. I mean,
Right.
it's scary to think that it could be even weaponized further, because I think you're right. It is subtle. It's been very subtle, and my mom and dad have been preaching this for years to us. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
when I remember when the whole like conversation of taking God out of school started. It was like when I was probably like fifth or sixth grade. The Pledge of Allegiance, like all these
mm,
things, one nation under God. Uh,
right.
It's
Interesting, dude. How old are you?
34.
Yeah. So I'm 33. I'll be 34 in October.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I totally remember that too. I totally remember that. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up very religious, very, very Roman Catholic, small town, very Italian little town, and it was, the Catholic guilt. I grew up with all of that. By the time I got old enough to have an opinion, I started to formulate my own, and I rebelled against that so hard. And then, I've come full circle and really, I wouldn't say have the same beliefs that I did before, but I certainly, I, I'm I know and have seen too many things to think that this is just not, it's just random. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
It's all too amazing. I watched this video I shared in my Instagram the other day, and it started with Earth, and it
Mm,
showed all the planets in our solar system, and it just kind of like jumped from one to the next, and then it gets to the sun, and then it like extrapolates out
mm,
into the Milky Way, and then it just keeps going and going. I
yeah.
mean, it kept me from sleeping a couple of nights because I just sat there and like thought and thought, and it was just like mind blowing. I kept watching this little clip over and over and just thinking, like, how is this even possible? And that's all that we as humans and our minds can even comprehend.
Yeah.
That's a microcosm of what's out there. And
Yep.
so to me, that's not possible just by nothing. Even if you think that, the Big Bang happened, something created that first
Yep.
ignition to happen,
Yep.
and that thing is special. It deserves attention.
So interesting you say that, dude. I was writing, I journal every morning. I wake up, I let my dogs out, I go and do my stretching and my breath work routine. I come inside, I hit my meditation, I make coffee, I go and journal. And I was journaling about that exact thing. And and I've been sort of As my meditation practice has grown, as my mind has expanded, my getting deeper into my truth, like we talked about, I have these moments of being totally in awe of this human experience, like sitting here in this body, looking out these eyes. This whole thing is happening, in this mind body vehicle. Because, like, isn't it amazing? You move your body and you don't think about it. There's no thoughts about moving your body. It's just like one thing that you're moving throughout your life. And I was thinking about that, man, the infinite expanse of space. And there's no borders, there's no walls, there's no fucking anything. It just keeps going and going and going and going. And there's what is this? I mean, this probably it's almost beyond comprehension, but I know it's been boiled down to this idea that there are as many galaxies in the universe, the multiverse, whatever you want to call it, as there are grains of sand on a beach. There's billions and billions, like, it's unfathomable how vast this thing is.
I'll send you a DM of this video, dude. It like,
I
'cause it
think I've seen it. I think I watched it with
so
Mike one day.
crazy, dude. I
Yeah,
just was
yeah.
like, I've shown
Mike,
a couple people.
yeah, Mike, Mike would just put on YouTube videos. And one day I was sitting with him and he put this video on, and it was that exact thing. It just kept going out and out and out and out and out. And it went so far, like, it gets so massive, you can't comprehend the vastness of it.
Well, I hit pause on it because when you watch it in full speed, it's mind blowing. But if you pause it towards the end, there's a portion where it's like it shows extrapolating out all the way to the Milky Way, and then it shows like all the Milky Way, all the different
Yeah.
galaxies that are there, and then those
Yeah.
are inside of something else, and then
Right.
it extrapolates. And so I like hit pause, and I'm like, I don't think that I've even comprehended what happened right there. Like the exponential growth of like how big one galaxy is. And then all of a sudden there's billions of them that are all inside of something, which there are billions of those. Then how many galaxies are there? How many Earths are there? How many
Right.
Justins are there? Like,
That's a trip. That's a trip, dude. It's mind blowing. It's totally mind blowing. And then you think about, how about if you go into yourself? I mean, you go into yourself, and if you took a microscope to yourself, like, there's billions upon billions of galaxies within the span of your fingernail. There's more space in your body than there is stuff. Like, when you get down to that subatomic level and you're looking through a microscope and you see the cells, there's more space than there are cells. That's a fucking trip. And then you think, okay, so we're like this microcosm of the macrocosm of this whole thing. Our consciousness is completely infinite. It's infinite. Think about it. You can't even really comprehend, but you can really tap into that through meditation and through breath work. And I believe, using your physical body and pushing yourself physically is an access point into all of this as well. you know um yeah, dude, I mean, it's so funny you bring that up because it's really where I'm at. And we spend a lot of time taking it all for granted. We spend a lot of time taking it for granted, and the truth of the matter is, this is a fucking miracle. You can't even put it into words. Literally, when you try to put it all into words, it just muddles it all up. Because the moment you put any of this into words and you try to describe the majesty of human life, of existence, of this experience that we're all having together here, immediately the words get taken in by your mind, and language is symbol. So your mind starts to create this conceptual model around the whole thing that simplifies it just into such a tiny funnel just to facilitate comprehension. But like it's so far beyond that. Like I was writing, let me just want to read this because it was sort of, you know, what an experience this is. I don't even know what to say about it. The irony is there is nothing to say about it because it all is. It just is. Words do not do this thing justice. The magnificence of it all, the vastness, the depth, the breadth. It is beyond profound. How does one begin to articulate the majesty of life? The blooming of a rose, the birth of a child, the blueness of the sky, the light and warmth of the sun. Words only befuddle it. As Buddha said, the moment I speak, I compromise myself, and this is true. You know, it's like, I guess we need language to communicate, and language is very important for that reason, but to try to put into words and conceptualize this thing that we're experiencing, it simplifies it too much. Like it doesn't even, it doesn't do it any justice, you know?
That's why I wish more people did, you know, psychedelics, because I think
Definitely.
that's the only way that I've ever been able to even come close. I mean, I've thought
Yeah.
about some of this, you know, on some fairly nice psilocybin trips, and I retain
Yeah.
some of it. You know, you retain some of it. There's a feeling that'll never leave. I mean, I say it all the time, and maybe it's corny, but I mean, I'm changed forever from some of those, and for the better. And
Yeah.
you know, and I'm so grateful for it. But I wish more people actually took it serious and realized that there's at a point in time when they're ready for it, because I think that's important. You got to be ready for it, but it's so beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so, well, you know, ancient tribal cultures, this was part of the culture. You know, there were rites of passage, there were regular medicine ceremonies. There's an incredible book, you've probably read it, The Cosmic Serpent, DNA and the Origins of Knowledge, written by Jeremy Narby. And it's basically he's this Swiss anthropologist who spent years down in the Amazon hanging out with these Peruvian shamans. Forget the tribe, but these guys are doing drawings of mitochondria and the DNA strands and constellations, and he's going, how the fuck do you guys know all of this? And they say the plants teach us these things. We see this in the plants. And, you know, we don't have that. What do we have? We have an industrialized education system. We have Western culture, which is built on, you know, the kind of the American dream is sort of the American mythology dream of, you know, whatever, like get educated, get a college degree, get your 9 to 5 job, climb the corporate ladder, start a family, have the 2.5 kids and a dog and a cat and a white picket fence. It's like, that's great, but that doesn't do anything for your understanding of the human experience that we're having, you know, or your understanding of the deeper understanding of yourself, which is really the most important thing, I would say, you know, which is what I think is leading to this, you know, going back to the beginning of our conversation, which is leading to this emotional and spiritual crisis, this mental health crisis that so many people are in the midst of. I mean, COVID just really brought us all to the forefront of having to confront ourselves and everything that's happening, you know. COVID is there's so many more issues at stake right now, you know. And this, I believe, it continues to come to me, you know, is why I do what I do. It's like, how can I help people because I was always, like my whole life has kind of been about how do I be the best version of myself? How can I do that? And I've along the way making a shitload of mistakes, stumbling. I've stumbled upon these tools that I'm not like inventing. These are ancient techniques, you know, breath work, meditation, plant medicine, uh, just having a regular movement practice, getting tight with God, who I interpret, you could call God your higher self, your core essence, you know, because that's really at the end of the day, that's like what psychedelics to me, cannabis, psilocybin, DMT, LSD, all these things, they're constantly just bringing us back to ourselves to have an experience of ourselves, our true selves. And what's more important than that right now? That's what we've got to do. We need everybody on this planet. We're all in this together, man. That's not like a fucking cute little marketing you know,
Right.
that's not like a cute little marketing idea. We are all in this together. There's a handful of people at the top who want us, who benefit off of us being really divided and at each other's throats and fighting against one another. But the truth of the matter is, we are all in this thing together. And we need every one of those people to be in their fucking highest greatness, because that's the only way we're going to transcend and get to the next level for the greatest good of the universe.
Well, and if this conversation doesn't make you go and check all things in your life, I'm going to suggest a movie. If you go to Amazon, not that I don't watch a whole lot of movies, but I'm a sucker for Joe Rogan. And when
Of
Rogan said that
course.
he watched this and it was actually very impactful for him, I was like, I gotta go check it out. And then I watched the trailer. It's called Greenland.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, I I went to bed and was like, okay, I've gotta wake up and formulate a whole new plan on life and what the hell can happen, because I don't know if it was just the stress that we've all been under, but man, they wrote a fucking movie that was so realistic in a lot of ways of how I think, God forbid there was ever like a apocalyptic event about to occur, but
Yeah.
this we
Yeah. I
things
watched
can
the
change.
trailer and it kind of, I watched the, I watched the trailer and it, I haven't watched the whole movie, but the trailer itself was like, yeah,
There's
make,
moments, man.
yeah, no, I'm sure, dude. I saw that post that Joe did and I was like, all right, maybe I have to watch it. But at the same time, I'm like, the COVID thing, COVID, if you didn't know this already, anything is possible, you know, and on a global human level, like anything is possible. Look at like our entire perception of life has been transformed. I mean, whatever side of the fence you're on about it, I mean, there will be people probably wearing masks for the rest of their lives
Yep.
now. Um, and so when I saw that trailer and they're talking about these meteors, like this, apocalyptic meteor storm coming, I was like, oh, I mean, yeah, yeah. I don't know. And the grand intelligence of it all, the highest intelligence there is, every move you make matters. Every single move you make, and if you're spending your time fucking, I don't know, living unconsciously, you're putting out ripples into the universe that enforce that. If you're spending your time living really consciously, self-reflection, moving to better yourself and the world around you, and that's like as seemingly insignificant as picking up a piece of garbage on the street and putting it in a trash can, or saying hello to somebody with a smile. Like, you have no idea. Like, going back to all the messages we get about how our work has changed someone's life. It's like, you have no idea. It might be just a word you utter that sends this ripple, this vibration out into the universe that connects with someone's ear or being, and it shifts their whole life. Their whole life gets shifted. And that sends ripples out. And then it sends more ripples out. You know, and who knows, maybe those are the ripples, maybe all of those positive ripples, which, what I mean, you know, it's all part of the same thing, the positive and the negative, but living from the place of love, compassion, gratitude, joy, kindness. Maybe that's the shield against the fucking meteoric storm. You know, maybe that, if you want to talk scientifically about it, maybe that like shifts the wobble of the earth to such a slight degree that the meteors that are coming to fucking wipe this thing clean, to start it all over, just barely miss. You know, you never know, because it all matters. Everything is matter, and it all matters.
Every flap of a butterfly's wing.
That's it, dude. It's totally it.
Always fun conversation with you, man.
Yeah, brother. I really I appreciate you big time, Justin.
Yeah, likewise, man. It's hopefully the next time we do this, it can be in person. You know, maybe the world will open up a little bit.
I'd love that.
I have to get myself to Los Angeles anyways. I have a lot of family that's living there now, so.
Nice, dude. Are you in Pennsylvania?
I am. Yeah, I'm
Cool.
north of Pittsburgh.
Okay, cool, man. Yeah, I would love that, dude. Let's do the next one in person for sure.
We will. What else is on the docket? Where can I have anybody that's listening to this go and check you out at?
Check me out. Obviously, Instagram is my big one, at EDS Britton. I've started uploading a lot of video content to YouTube. You could just find me at Eben Britton. That's, you know, it's me on my channel. Like I mentioned earlier, I've started a Patreon account, patreon.com/EDS Britton. And you can find all this stuff at my website, ebenbritton.com. And and jam the podcast if you're interested, called the Eben Flow, available on all podcast platforms. I appreciate you, man.
Really, really appreciate you.